It usually starts with something small: a text message, an awkward conversation, a mistake, and suddenly, your brain turns into a courtroom. Every memory becomes evidence. Every possibility becomes a threat. You replay the same moment again and again, trying to find the perfect answer. But the more you think, the worse you feel. And here's the strange part: overthinking doesn't come from stupidity. It comes from intelligence mixed with fear. Your brain believes that if it thinks hard enough, it can prevent pain. But what if the real solution isn't more thinking? What if it's one simple question? That instantly breaks the cycle. Ask this one question to stop overthinking instantly. The silent mental battle. Overthinking is one of the most exhausting experiences a human being can go through. It traps people inside their own minds, turning simple situations into endless mental battles. A small mistake becomes a disaster. A short conversation becomes something to analyze for hours. A future problem that may never happen suddenly feels completely real. Most people think overthinking happens because they care too much or because they are weak under pressure, but psychology suggests something much deeper. Overthinking is often the brain's attempt to create certainty in an uncertain world. The mind believes that if it keeps thinking long enough, it can somehow prevent pain, embarrassment, failure, or regret. But instead of creating peace, it creates anxiety. Instead of solving problems, it drains energy. Eventually, people become prisoners of thoughts that never stop repeating. Why the human brain overthinks. The human brain is naturally designed to search for danger. Long before modern society existed, survival depended on noticing threats quickly. Early humans who ignored danger were less likely to survive, while those who constantly scanned their environment had a better chance of staying alive. Even though modern life has changed dramatically, the brain still carries this ancient survival system. The difference is that most threats today are emotional instead of physical. People fear rejection, humiliation, loneliness, failure, and uncertainty. The brain responds to these emotional threats almost the same way it once responded to predators. This is why overthinking feels so intense. The body reacts as if something dangerous is happening, even when the danger only exists inside the imagination. The psychology of repetitive thinking. Psychologists often describe overthinking as repetitive negative thinking. It usually appears in two forms: rumination and worry. Rumination focuses on the past. People replay conversations, mistakes, and embarrassing moments repeatedly, trying to understand what went wrong. Worry focuses on the future. The mind imagines endless worst-case scenarios and tries to prepare for situations that have not even happened yet. Both forms create the illusion of control. The brain believes that thinking more will eventually produce certainty. However, certainty is impossible in many parts of life. No amount of thinking can fully predict how people will react, what the future will bring, or whether everything will go according to plan. Why overthinking feels productive. One of the biggest psychological traps of overthinking is that it feels productive. People assume that because they are mentally active, they are making progress. In reality, overthinking often replaces action instead of supporting it. A student may spend hours worrying about failure instead of studying. Someone afraid of rejection may analyze every possible outcome instead of speaking honestly. Another person may spend weeks planning something perfectly without ever beginning. The mind becomes stuck in preparation mode because thinking feels safer than acting. Action involves uncertainty and vulnerability, while endless thinking creates temporary emotional comfort. But the comfort never lasts, the thoughts always return. How overthinking affects the body. Overthinking does not only affect the mind, it also affects the body in powerful ways. When the brain perceives danger, stress hormones such as cortisol increase, heart rate rises, muscles tighten, and sleep becomes difficult. This is why people who overthink often feel mentally and physically exhausted at the same time. Their minds remain active even when their bodies are tired. Many people experience this most strongly at night. During the day, distractions keep the mind occupied, but silence allows thoughts to become louder. A single thought can quickly multiply into dozens of fears, regrets, and imagined scenarios. The brain continues searching for answers even when there are none available. The brain cannot always separate imagination from reality. One of the most dangerous parts of overthinking is that the brain often cannot distinguish between imagined threats and real threats. Research in psychology has shown that imagining stressful situations can activate emotional responses similar to actually experiencing them. This means that people suffer emotionally from events that may never happen. Someone may spend days worrying about failure before an important event, only to discover that everything turns out fine. The pain came not from reality, but from imagination, yet to the brain, the fear felt completely real. The one question that changes everything. This is where one important question can completely interrupt the cycle of overthinking. Can I do something about this right now? At first, the question may seem almost too simple to matter, but psychologically it is. Extremely powerful because it forces the brain to separate what is controllable from what is uncontrollable. Most overthinking exists in areas beyond human control. People obsess over how others see them, whether the future will go perfectly or whether they made the perfect decision. The mind searches endlessly for certainty in situations where certainty cannot exist. Extremely powerful because it forces the brain to separate what is controllable from what is uncontrollable. Most overthinking exists in areas beyond human control. People obsess over how others see them, whether the future will go perfectly or whether they made the perfect decision. The mind searches endlessly for certainty in situations where certainty cannot exist. If the answer is yes. When someone asks, "Can I do something about this right now?" and the answer is yes, the brain shifts toward action. Instead of endlessly repeating thoughts, the person can take a practical step forward. If someone is worried about an exam, they can study. If they are worried about a conversation, they can prepare honestly. If they are anxious about a task, they can begin working on it. Action interrupts mental spirals because it redirects energy away from imagination and toward reality, if the answer is no. However, if the answer is no, then the thought no longer deserves unlimited mental attention. This realization is important because overthinking survives by convincing people that worrying equals control. In truth, many things cannot be solved through mental repetition. Some situations require patience, others require acceptance, and some simply require letting go. Continuously replaying uncontrollable situations only increases emotional suffering. The power of acceptance. Acceptance is one of the hardest psychological skills to develop because the human mind naturally resists uncertainty. People often believe that letting go means giving up, but they are not the same thing. Letting go means recognizing the limits of control. It means understanding that not every problem can be solved immediately, and not every fear deserves constant attention. Research in modern psychology shows that acceptance often reduces anxiety more effectively than mental resistance. The more people fight unwanted thoughts, the stronger those thoughts tend to become. But when thoughts are acknowledged without obsession, they slowly lose power over time. Mentally strong people think differently. Mentally strong people are not people without fear or anxiety. They are people who understand which thoughts deserve attention and which thoughts should be ignored. Every human mind produces random fears, doubts, and negative possibilities. The difference is that some people treat every thought as important, while others allow unnecessary thoughts to pass without feeding them energy. Attention acts like fuel for the mind. Whatever receives repeated attention becomes stronger. Overthinking grows because people unknowingly feed it with constant focus. What real peace actually means. Peace of mind does not come from eliminating thoughts completely. That would be impossible. The human brain constantly generates thoughts every single day. True peace comes from changing the relationship with those thoughts. People do not need to believe every fear their minds create. They do not need to solve every future before it arrives. And they do not need to carry every mistake forever. Sometimes the healthiest response is simply to pause and ask whether a thought truly deserves more energy. Final thoughts. In many ways, overthinking is the mind's attempt to protect itself from pain, but ironically, it often creates the very suffering people are trying to avoid. Endless thinking steals joy from the present moment. It prevents people from resting, enjoying relationships, taking opportunities, and feeling emotionally free. That is why the question, can I do something about this? Overthinking grows because people unknowingly feed it with constant focus. What real peace actually means. Peace of mind does not come from eliminating thoughts completely. That would be impossible. The human brain constantly generates thoughts every single day. True peace comes from changing the relationship with those thoughts. People do not need to believe every fear their minds create. They do not need to solve every future before it arrives. And they do not need to carry every mistake forever. Sometimes the healthiest response is simply to pause and ask whether a thought truly deserves more energy. Final thoughts. In many ways, overthinking is the mind's attempt to protect itself from pain, but ironically, it often creates the very suffering people are trying to avoid. Endless thinking steals joy from the present moment. It prevents people from resting, enjoying relationships, taking opportunities, and feeling emotionally free. That is why the question, can I do something about this?